It's been cast and recast so many times now that it is in danger of becoming a cliche. I have a dream. In fact, in some ways, it may have already become rote through repetition, through sanitization, through dilution. I have a dream. Now it's sometimes used as sound bites in commercials for cars and television stations and other corporate interests. On the day that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave the address to the nation that sweltering August day in 1963 on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, I wondered if he knew that those 4 words, repeated 9 times towards the end of his speech, would come to be inseparably linked to the remembrance of him in the nation's and in the world's consciousness. His address didn't start out with a dream necessarily. His address, the last of many given that day before hundreds of thousands of people on the Mall, began with greetings. Then it moved to an indictment of the United States for not honoring its covenant with its African American citizens, as set forth by the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. And we can ask today, as we consider what it means to rethink the dream, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to call the United States home? Who is America? Indeed, what does it mean to be a documented native-born American when, based on your physical appearance alone, a law enforcement officer might mistake you for an undocumented immigrant and take you into custody? Now, at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, to be a fully enfranchised U.S. citizen, you would have to have been a white male who owned land. Over time, we've seen that definition of what it means to be a citizen expand and change. Now, you don't have to be any of those things, and you can still have a U.S. passport and a Social Security number. Each successive generation calls for a renewal of Dr. King's dream. This is the real challenge of his legacy. Yes, it is important to do things that enhance our local communities, to feed people who are hungry, to clothe people who have not enough to wear, to provide shelter for the homeless. These are radical acts in themselves inside the commercial culture that we live in that breeds narcissism and self-gratification. Yet, if we look beyond the adoring crowds, the awards, the accolades, the fame that accumulated for Dr. King over his lifetime, we find a very vulnerable young man with a young family in the eye of a cultural storm. We find someone who not only dreamed a dream, but who also gave his life to the fulfillment of that dream. Exactly what did Dr. King dream? Let's take just a few minutes to remember what he said that extraordinary day. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering in the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, Little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh will see it together. Where would we be if Dr. King hadn't had a dream? We couldn't have blamed him. He was aware from a young age of the discrimination faced by African Americans, such as himself. Without a dream, he could easily have become a victim of despair, disempowered with no prospects for the future. Why even try to make a difference in the world when at every turn there were obstacles to the vision he wanted to bring into reality? What would have happened if he had taken his genius and used violent means instead of nonviolent means to accomplish his ends? What would have happened if he had been as patient as the gradualists were telling him to be? Would the torture and the beatings of African Americans have gone all unchecked, along with the petty indignities and apartheid practices that were common in his youth right here in the United States? As Langston Hughes wrote, "Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Hold fast to dreams, for when dreams go, life is a barren field frozen with snow." What kind of dream did Dr. King have? Did he dream of big cars and big houses? Did he preach the kind of prosperity gospel that seems commonplace today? God wants to prosper you. God wants you to be the head and not the tail. No, he preached nothing of the sort. Dr. King's dream couldn't be contained by material things. Dr. King dreamed of a harvest of freedom, justice, and equality for this country that everyone could reap from coast to coast. He dreamed a dream of kinship, where there was a seat at the table for everyone, and no one was treated differently because their ancestors were enslaved or had been slave masters. So Dr. King's dream was very different from what we tend to think of today as the American dream. This is what the scholar Cornel West wrote in his book, Prophetic Writings. Dr. King did not support or affirm the bland American dream of comfortable living and material prosperity. Rather, he put forth his own dream, grounded and refined in the Black church experience, supplemented by liberal Christianity, and implemented by Gandhian methods of nonviolent resistance, rooted in the American dream and the American ideas of democracy, freedom, and equality. Now, last month, many of us were hopeful as the DREAM Act passed the House of Representatives. As has been mentioned, it would have provided a path of citizenship for young people like Henry, like Harel, who came here as undocumented minors, or came here with the tourist visas and later became undocumented because of choices that their parents made. By pursuing higher education or service in the military, they would be granted the opportunity to officially call the United States their home country, though for many of them, it's already the only country they've really known. It was defeated in the Senate just before the holiday break. What a setback that represented to those of us who see the DREAM Act as part of the overhaul that's needed for U.S. immigration policies. I know it was especially painful for those among us who would have benefited directly from the passage of the DREAM. And yet there are still lessons to learn from Dr. King and his dream and his life for dreamers and those of us who also hold the dream dear. And are we not all dreamers, in fact? One of the lessons we can learn is this: given a chance, young people are very capable Martin Luther King Jr. was an activist as a young person. Though it was a long time ago, it's important to remember that he was only 26 years old when Rosa Parks refused to sit at the back of the bus, and he stepped in to lead the Montgomery bus boycott. That one nonviolent protest in small-town Alabama set the stage for the sweeping transformation of rights for African Americans and became a renewed expression of nonviolence as a force for social change. In addition to recognizing the power of young people, Dr. King's life also tells us that education can open doors of opportunities for individuals and for the masses. We know Dr. King was a learned man, someone who absorbed inspiration and strategies from many sources. Because of his studies of liberal theologians, of secular philosophers, of nonviolent resistance, he was able to expand upon the strong foundation he had in the Black church experience. He was skilled at communicating his message of love and compassion to those who were part of his base and that he was part of himself, and to others well beyond his base. Another thing that we can learn from Dr. King's life and his dream is this: if it's large enough, a dream can change the world. A dream has the power to change the world. Though much of the language in Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech is framed in terms of Black people and white people, we get a sense of the ultimate universality of his message. It's the case that people wanted him to just stay focused on racial issues between blacks and whites, but his dream for the world was much larger than that. So he began speaking out against the war in Vietnam. Here's what he said on one occasion: "When I see our country intervening in what is basically a civil war, destroying hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese children with napalm, leaving broken bodies in countless fields, and sending half men, mutilated mentally and physically, back home, all of this in the name of peace, I tremble for our world." And he continued, "I speak out against this war because I am disappointed in America. There can be no great disappointment where there is no great love." So Dr. King was working for the purpose of saving the soul of America. Like so many of our elected officials, he believed in our democracy, in our way of government, in its ability to be transformative and represent all people. And I think today about Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who voted in favor of the passage of the DREAM Act last month. While there is no way of knowing the full intent or motivation of the demented young man who tried to assassinate her, killing 6 people and wounding more than a dozen others in the process, we can predict that there might be more attacks in an environment of hostility directed at some of our elected officials and at immigrants. How striking it is that in this week that we remember Dr. King and his legacy, we have such a devastating reminder of the violence that is part of our nature as human beings. We are reminded of our vulnerability, how that is our common lot, and how reliant each one of us is on the goodwill of the other. Dr. King's dream calls for constant renewal, and he had his idea, his vision of what renewal would look like in his time. But each of us has a chance now to reflect upon how we can expand on his dream today in our context, with our issues, in our own time. Many of the things that he dreamed have come to pass, but as more things come to pass, it creates more opportunity for us to find ourselves anew in his dream. And I started to think myself about, well, if I were dreaming a dream today, and I actually am dreaming a dream today, what would that include? I have a dream that one day we will all live in peace, free of the scourge of random acts of violence perpetuated on innocent and vulnerable people. I have a dream that the most troubled among us are protected from doing harm to themselves and to others. I have a dream that one day everyone has enough food, money, clothing, health care, and opportunities that they can get their basic needs met without having to leave their friends behind and their family behind in their homelands. I have a dream that the immigration policies of the United States will be guided by what is fair and compassionate instead of what is politically expedient. I have a dream that our foreign policy reflects the best interest of everyday people more than it favors multinational corporations. I have a dream that the dreamers among us have a chance to reach the fullness of their potential, and they and their families live free of hostility and fear. Some of us are going to have a chance to go down to Richmond this week, down to the Capitol, where we're going to be advocating for opportunities for young people such as our dreamers who are with us here today. I'm grateful for those in this congregation who have that vision also, and that we are able to keep Dr. King's dream alive by what we do together, our working together, our pulling together, our singing together, and our dreaming together. As we go from this place and we go into the rest of this week and into the rest of this year, may we continue to dream dreams that are large enough that we move from thinking of one another as us and them, and it starts to be us, humankind, bound together in a common thread of destiny. We shall